I'm exploring the fascinating world of plants, from the most bizarre to the most beautiful. With new techniques and in 3D, we can unravel their deepest secrets. We can move from our time scale to theirs. We can see how they struggle with one another, how they get help from some animals, but have to battle with others, and survive against the odds. And we can watch all these dramas taking place in a way that is impossible in the wild in one unique institution. The Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew. In this living laboratory, we can discover plants' most extreme adaptations for survival. And we can glimpse Kew's tiny weapons in the battle to protect the future of all plants, seeds. Ever since plants first moved out of water and colonized the land, they've advanced into drier and drier places and evolved specialist adaptations in order that they can do so. Today, deserts cover about a third of the land surface of the Earth, and they're spreading rapidly. But some plants have developed some truly extraordinary strategies to enable them to survive in the driest of places. In deserts where water is scarce, one major strategy is to remain passive during the day when temperatures soar and only become active in the cool of the night. This desert, in Kew's Princess of Wales Conservatory, contains plants from arid regions all around the world. And in midsummer, one plant here does something truly astonishing. Don't be deceived by the shriveled, untidy appearance of this cactus. It is in fact one of the most remarkable members of the cactus family. It's called Hylocereus, the queen of the night. It lives in Mexico, where during the summer at midday, the temperatures can reach a crippling 50 degrees centigrade. So during the day, it doesn't do much. But once a year, and for one night only, it becomes a thing of astounding beauty. The flowers usually open on a night of the full moon, and as they do so, they give off a smell which attracts night-flying animals, large and small. And as they get nearer, they can see the great white flowers bright in the light of the full moon, and they go to them to sip the nectar, and in doing so, pollinate the cactus. It might seem strange, even risky, for a plant to restrict its flowering to just one night of the year. But this strategy works for Hylocereus. Its flowers are the biggest and brightest around, and they offer its pollinators a nectar bonanza. Bats. With the aid of technology, we can imagine them thousands of miles from their natural habitat here in Kew. Bats pollinate all kinds of cacti. In springtime in South American deserts, there is always a cactus of one kind or another in bloom. A multitude of species compete for the attentions of nocturnal pollinators using bright petals and powerful scent. The sweetest perfumes attract insects. But flowers that are pollinated by bats are rather more pungent. They give off the stench of rotten fruit. To nectar-feeding bats, that smell is irresistible. They fly from cactus to cactus, sipping up the nectar. Each bat can consume 1.5 times its body weight of nectar in a single night. Very tall columnar species produce flowers right at the very top of their stems, where they're easily smelt and seen and easily reached. Some provide additional facilities. Espastoa guanteri from Bolivia sprouts a landing strip beneath its flowers, a pad of fur on which the bats can alight without damaging their wings on the spines. But in Mexico, bats and cacti have an even more extraordinary relationship. Each year, bats migrate across 1,000 miles of desert from central Mexico to Arizona. Pregnant females, 100,000 of them, are on their way to special maternity caves in the north where they will give birth to their young. The bats get all the nectar they need to sustain their journey, and in return, they pollinate the cacti. This annual bat migration coincides exactly with the blooming of the night-flowering cacti, so the bats can fly along a nectar corridor. And so can cross a patch of desert that otherwise and at other times would be impassable to them. By the time the bats return with their pups, the cacti are able once again to provide the bats with food, this time their fruits. The bats carry with them in their stomachs the fruit and the seed it contains, and in due course they deposit those seeds with a nice little packet of fertilizer farther down the corridor. So the corridors are self-perpetuating. The bats, in effect, are cactus farmers. Perhaps the most extraordinary thing about these night-blooming cacti is that just a few hours after the flowers burst open, they begin to close. By the time the sun appears, they have already wilted and died. This is all part of their survival strategy. The closed petals form a protective shield around the newly pollinated seeds, locking vital moisture inside. The light of a new day reveals the bizarre nature of dry zone plants. These are surely some of the oddest looking species there are, and their strange shapes are a direct response to the harsh conditions. These plants must stay in the baking sun to collect the light they need, but they must also retain their moisture. Many do that by turning either their green stems or their waxy leaves into reservoirs. This extraordinary cactus from Mexico is covered in thick white hair. It's called the old man. This fur not only provides shade, but restricts the circulation of air around the surface of the stem, and that reduces water loss. In even hotter and drier climates, some plants avoid the sun altogether. This is Fenestraria, the window plant. It grows in the Kalahari Desert, with most of its body buried beneath the soil. Only the blunt, flattened tips of its leaves are exposed. Each contains tiny lenses which transmit the sunlight down through the vertical leaf onto its green photosynthesizing cells. Some desert plants that live in exceptionally hot, dry conditions take even more drastic measures. Leaves are very thin and have a large surface area, so they lose a lot of moisture in heat, and many desert plants have done without them altogether. Instead, the valuable green pigment develops in the stems, and desert stems are often very thick and swollen, and that enables a plant to store water in them. Not only that, but some desert plants have pleats in these stems, so that when there is a sudden rainstorm, those ridges can suck up all the moisture while it's there and expand in order to hold it. The stems of some of these species swell to such a degree that they become almost spherical. A sphere has a minimum surface area for any given volume, and that enables the plant to hold as much water as possible. This one is Copiapoa from northern Chile, where it never rains at all. But in fact, it doesn't need it. Under a microscope, you can see why. There are thousands of tiny, jagged structures on which the morning dew condenses so that the plant can collect it. But the ultimate is this plant.
It's hidden between these light-coloured pebbles. Blosfeldia from Argentina.
This is the only flowering plant that can withstand total desiccation for months on end, and then with a shower of rain or a little bit of water, it comes to life and produces a tiny little flower.
This ability to wait for the right conditions is the trump card that enables many plants to survive in the dry zone. In many deserts, plants must endure months, sometimes years, of drought. They do it by slowing down their metabolism and going into a state of virtual dormancy. But when rains finally arrive, plants like these suddenly come to life. Their dried out tissues absorb water like sponges. And once expanded, they use the moisture to grow. This primitive, rootless plant from the Chihuahua Desert in Mexico is a spike moss, Selaginella. It's also called the resurrection plant because of its ability to seemingly come back from the dead. Rain starts a complex biochemical change in its cells that enables it to ramp up its metabolism and grow very quickly while it can. But the most spectacular consequence of rain in the desert is an explosion of colour. Desert flowers are as colourful as any in the world. They have to attract pollinators quickly before the deserts dry out once again. But moisture in the soil can evaporate almost as quickly as it arrives, and after a brief bloom, they die.
Desert plants can only grow when the conditions are right, and that may be only for a few short periods in the year. So many desert plants take a long time to reach full size. That agave there, for example, is over 40 years old. But during that time, it has manufactured food and gathered water and stored them in its great fat leaves. But it's not yet adult. This one is. This agave has started to withdraw that water and food from its leaves, so now they're beginning to crumple and wilt. And it uses that food to fuel the growth of this huge mast-like stem that grows from its center and will carry the flowers. And it reaches its full height at extraordinary speed.
It can grow by 1/4 of a metre every day. It reaches such a height that here in Kew's glasshouse, panes have to be removed from the roof to let it through. This infrequency of flowering has given this species of agave a nickname, the century plant.
So, why does the agave produce this huge, tall mast? Well, some plants are pollinated by insects, and you attract insects with smell. But this plant is pollinated by birds, hummingbirds, and birds have little or no sense of smell. To attract them, you have to exploit their very sharp sight. You have to produce flowers that are very bright and put them right at the top of a prominent, tall mast.
Growing at such a rate demands considerable effort. For the agave, it's terminal.
The act of producing that mast is the last act in this plant's life. Having done it and been pollinated, it dies.
Thanks to their extraordinary survival strategies, desert plants are able to thrive in places where others would die. But that makes them the focus of much unwanted attention.
There's a downside to success for a desert plant. The more water it stores, the more tempting it is for a thirsty animal to try and steal it. So desert plants have to have good defenses.
The techniques they use can tell us something about the herbivores that try to feed on them. This Echinopsis from Argentina develops long, strong spines as a defense against large grazing animals, llamas. But such defenses also provide hiding places where an insect or a spider can keep out of harm's way.
There are other ways in which a plant can protect itself. You can disguise yourself so that you become virtually invisible, as these stone plants have done. These are not pebbles, as you might think. They are living plants.
These are lithops from the deserts of Africa, and their markings closely match their surroundings.
What's more, they vary in colour according to the rocks on which they grow. That's grow in pale rocks, and those on reddish rocks. Or you can load the water you contain with a particularly strong chemical which animals might find distasteful. This is the peyote plant from Mexico, and its sap not only puts off animals, but has the property of suppressing pain. So the local people use it for that purpose, and also in their religious rituals, for it's also hallucinogenic.
In colder regions, pine trees also have to conserve water, for during the winter, water in the soil is frozen and so beyond their reach. Little evaporates from their leaves because they've been reduced to stiff, tough needles. Like cacti, they also produce distasteful chemicals.
The distinctive smell that you sense when you walk among pine trees comes from volatile oils that the trees produce in their leaves. It's a form of defense. Most insects can't bear it, but one can, the pine aphid. When that attacks, however, the pine trees have a second line of defense. They produce that volatile oil from the cuts made by the insects in even greater quantity, and that crucially changes the nature of the smells around the trees.
Aphid infestation triggers a complex chain reaction from the pines. Each time an aphid bites, the pine releases oily vapor from the wound, which fills the surrounding air. This triggers the release of further volatiles from other branches, even other trees. The effect multiplies until eventually whole forests become cloaked in pine scent. This scent cloud attracts predatory ladybirds. They're as sensitive to it as sharks are to blood. This is the eyed ladybird, and it preys on pine aphids. It locates an infestation by following the trail of volatiles. And once there, it makes short work of the prey. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. The ladybird gets an easy meal, and the pine tree gets rid of a pest. Some dry zone plants use oils to defend themselves from other dangers, not from insects, but other plants.
This is a eucalyptus, famous for the oil in its leaves. It produces that oil in such quantity that under certain conditions it can form a blue haze above the tree. In fact, the Blue Mountains of New South Wales and Australia get their name from the haze that hangs over the eucalyptus forest sometimes. When the leaves fall to the ground and rot, the oil leaches out into the soil. And there, reinforced by more oil secreted by the roots, it acts as an inhibitor that prevents other seeds of other plants from growing around its base, so reducing competition for the eucalyptus.
Another species use oils in a different way, and a more dramatic one.
If the temperature raises to 32 degrees centigrade, those substances in the leaves of this cistus plant from the Mediterranean can spontaneously burst into flame.
Reduce the cistus to a cinder, and the plant itself will never recover. But this is not a disastrous accident. The cistus has evolved to burn. Such extraordinary sacrifice ensures a different kind of survival of its offspring. The flames will also destroy all other plants from the surrounding area. And this gives the cistus a chance to extend its territory. from the ashes, a new generation of cistus quickly rises. Cistus seeds escape damage because they're enclosed in flame-resistant capsules. Furthermore, the smoke stimulates their germination. It has taken millions of years for such complex adaptations as this to evolve. But today, plants in the dry zone and beyond face a new threat. From rainforests to mountain ranges, the evidence is that plants across the world are disappearing in variety and number faster than at any other time in the Earth's history. Human beings are taking over more and more of the world's wild places. But human intervention can also be the key to their future survival. Kew is at the forefront of the effort. Its unique facilities enable scientists here to both measure the loss of species and work out how to prevent extinctions before it's too late. And a crucial resource in that battle is held in this building, the Herbarium. Its collection of preserved and dried specimens contains samples of 90% of all known plant species on Earth.
Here, almost unbelievably, there are records of every single specimen ever sent to Kew. It was founded in 1853. Now, staff process about 50,000 specimens that are sent every year from all over the world. It contains about 8 million specimens. It's the biggest repository of botanical data in the world and Kew's major weapon in the battle to save the plants of the planet.
This vast data bank plays a vital part in monitoring the global health of plants. It's run by curator David Attenborough.
This herbarium, 8 million odd specimens, is actually a record of the vegetation of the Earth through time. There are some things which have gone completely extinct, and so all that's known of them is just some herbarium specimens. For example, this is a relation of the olive, which was known only from one island off the coast of California, and it hasn't been seen since 1873.
Really?
Even then there were only 3, and that's all that we've got left now.
Goodness. These specimens, though, are referred to, aren't they, for identification?
Yes, well, these are the standards. And the ones which are in these red folders like this are actually the ones upon which the original description of a plant was made, the so-called type specimen. And therefore, this is the kind of gold standard. If anybody really wants to know what is meant by a particular plant name, they must refer to the type specimen.
The path to saving endangered species often begins here.
For example, back in 1874, this specimen was sent back from the island of Rodriguez in the Indian Ocean, of a tree they called the Café Marron, a kind of coffee. It was preserved here, given a Latin name, and put in the herbarium. And then, about 50 years later, people on Rodriguez realized that Café Marron had disappeared. Then, in 1979, someone found a plant. Was it or was it not Café Marron? A specimen was sent here, compared with this specimen, and indeed it proved to be the case. So from that single plant, a cutting was taken, and sent here to Kew for propagation.
From that single cutting, horticulturalists grew a handful of cloned specimens. But although they flowered frequently, they never produced viable seed. Without the ability to reproduce, the Café Marron was still doomed. So the plant earned the nickname, the living dead. The daunting challenge of rescuing it was taken up by endangered plant specialist Carlos Magdalena. After several months of experimentation with heat and light, he finally managed to induce the plant to produce seeds. But when they germinated, the young plants had leaves so unlike the Café Marron he knew, he thought he must have made a mistake.
That's quite different from Café Marron.
It's totally different, isn't it? Different color, different leaf shape.
So were you surprised?
Well, I was surprised in the way that I never seen them before.
This strange plant looked nothing like the herbarium sample. At first, nobody could be sure that it was even the same species. But as it grew, it changed. And eventually, it morphed into a recognizable adult plant. But what is the reason for this dramatic change as the Café Marron matures? The answer is camouflage.
This is the most famous inhabitant of the island of Rodriguez, a giant tortoise. It loves bananas. Go on. But they also like green leaves, and that's their main food. So any plant growing close to the ground has very little chance of survival while creatures like this are going around eating them. And that's the clue to the mystery of the Café Marron. When it's small, it produces leaves that are very thin and not even green. And the tortoise, whose eyesight is not very good, doesn't even see it. So he takes very little notice of leaves like this, and the Café Marron can grow. As it grows, it becomes a bit bigger, and still its leaves are thin and dark and rather inconspicuous. And it's not until it's really quite tall does the Café Marron plant produce its proper green leaves and its flowers. But by that time, it's well beyond the reach of a giant tortoise. So that is the solution to the Café Marron mystery. The plant produces two different leaves as a defense of being eaten.
The Café Marron's survival is tribute to the skills developed here at Kew. But it is just one species. The ultimate aim is to safeguard all remaining plant species. And there may be a way of doing that by using these extraordinary structures: seeds. A 3D microscope magnifies them up to 200 times and reveals how extraordinarily complex the surface of a seed can be. No two species are the same. These images have been given artificial colours, but many of their shapes are beyond explanation. Some structures, however, have a clear function. They help the seed to achieve one of its main purposes, to travel. Many seeds rely on animal couriers. The American stick seed attaches itself to the fur or skin of passing animals with hooks and barbed spikes. The amazing sticking structures of such hitchhikers inspired the invention of Velcro. Some seeds carry a little packet of nutritious fat, which persuades an ant to take it back to its underground nest, where the seed, having surrendered its fatty reward to the ants, can germinate in safety. The seeds of orchids are minuscule and produced in their millions. They blow away like dust. In contrast, this much bigger seed has a large flat membrane which serves as a wing, so that it can float great distances on the wind. Other wind-dispersed seeds, like the yellow paintbrush, have a honeycomb texture. Such complex sculpturing enables seeds to catch the slightest wind current and ride thermals, travelling long distances from their mother plants. But these images also reveal the incredible toughness of the seed's outer capsule. This strength may be the key to the survival of all plants. For seeds can survive all kinds of hardship. This plant is called the pincushion and grows in South Africa. And this individual specimen is something of a miracle.
In 1803, a British man-of-war captured a Dutch merchantman coming back from the Cape of Good Hope. And on board, in the cargo, they found a packet of seeds. When they got back to Britain, the seeds went to the Tower of London for quite a long time. But eventually, they found their way here to Kew. And one of them germinated and produced this plant after 200 years. Just shows how long seeds can survive even without help.
This ability to endure has inspired Kew's latest groundbreaking project. Its ultimate goal is to ensure the survival of every remaining species of plant on Earth. The work takes place deep underground in a labyrinth of sealed vaults that are encased in steel and concrete. It's called the Kew Millennium Seed Bank.
Its contents are so valuable that it was specifically designed to withstand the impact of a bomb or an air crash. Inside these vaults, there are seeds gathered from plants all over the world. In fact, as much as 10% of the world's known species are represented in there.
The Seed Bank project is this gigantic freezer full of seeds in sealed jars. The conditions inside are perfect for long-term storage. But the job is aided by the very nature of seeds. The seed is the stage in which a plant can remain dormant, waiting until conditions for germination are right.
Inside each seed, there's a store of food. Outside, there's a tough protective shell to guard against predation or damage. In fact, a seed is a kind of time capsule that can live for sometimes a decade, sometimes even centuries. The aim of the seed bank is to prolong that period as long as possible. To do that, they clean the seeds, dry them, put them in jars like this, and then keep them here at minus 20 degrees centigrade. How long they will survive under these conditions, nobody knows, but it's certainly going to be for a very long time.
New samples arrived at the seed bank every day. They are first identified and studied in microscopic detail by Chief Morphologist Dr. Wolfgang Stuppy.
The latest report from Israel claims that date palm seeds have been found in King Herod the Great palace in Masada, and they germinated after 2,000 years. So that is possible, and this is the principle the Millennium Seed Bank is built upon, that seeds can survive for millennia if necessary.
The longevity of most kinds of seeds is unknown, so they must be regularly checked. Samples of seeds are periodically removed from the vaults and germinated. If most grow, the whole batch can be left in the vaults for another decade. But sometimes a sample fails, like these anemone seeds, which, although germinating in sterilized conditions, become choked with fungus. When this happens, the scientists must find out why and how to prevent it happening again. The seed bank project is still in its infancy, but the evidence is that there's no time to lose. There are already seeds stored here from plants that are now extinct in the wild.
The problem is, what many people don't understand, is that if a species goes extinct, it means it is gone for us forever. There was 5 mass extinctions in the Earth's history. After every mass extinction, it took between 4 and 20 million years for biodiversity to bounce back to pre-extinction levels. Now, clearly we cannot wait 4 million years for life to bounce back. So if we don't keep seeds here and this plant species goes extinct, it will be lost to mankind forever.
Thankfully, there's a great momentum behind the seed bank project. Over the next few decades, these shelves will be filled to capacity.
There's enough space here to hold seed from every single species of plants on this planet. But this place is not just an insurance policy against the ultimate apocalypse. This is of huge value right now. For wherever we discover that a plant is teetering on the brink of extinction, we can now bolster its numbers with seeds from here and so ensure that no plant species on Earth need go extinct.
There are an estimated 400,000 different species of plant on the planet. We can't possibly understand the lives of each and every one of them. But here at the Royal Botanic Gardens in Kew, one of the birthplaces of scientific botany, we've begun to glimpse their extraordinary world. Kew is still in the forefront of botanical research, helping to ensure that we not only understand plants, but protect them in all their astonishing variety. And here we can see how plants in all habitats and environments are intricately connected with animals and with fungi. Not only do plants give the world much of its beauty, they are indeed the very basis of all life on Earth.